How are you? Welcome. Now, we are going to have time for one or maybe two questions from the audience, but I need you guys to be proactive. Find an usher and raise your hand, because if not, I'm going to go to Dina for a question. She's going to have to come up with a question. So, inflation is permeating absolutely everything these days, but so much of the conversation, I think, revolves around what central bankers should be doing. Mostly about interest rates, right? But is that all we've got in terms of tools in our pocket? Aren't there other steps that governments and the private sector can take to damp down the cost of living? So I know that there's no silver bullet, but I'd like to hear some of the silver buckshot from you guys. What is the best idea that you guys might have to bring down the cost of living? Your Royal Highness, would you like to start?
Wow, thank you. Okay. Well, obviously, what the kingdom is trying to do is create jobs and also diversify our economy. But we have to look at across the board, what is the idea of consumption and overconsumption? What do we need? And what do we need as a nation? I think we have all been overspending, overbuying, overconsuming, and this click button, prime, immediate delivery has skewed our perception of what our personal costs are, personal needs, and our engagement. I think we have been thinking too macro, and if we listen to our last panel and the panel before, let's go back to micro and have a little bit more personal responsibility. And I think that financial literacy, financial engagement at a younger age will allow us all to be more efficient citizens, regardless of whether we're in a kingdom in the Middle East or we're in the West, and the concept of interconnectivity of our behavior and our actions. I think we've lost the concept of our personal impact on economies and other people's lives.
Interesting. I want to come back to the idea around financial literacy. Senator, what about you? What killer idea have you got?
If I had a very killer idea, I was Prime Minister. No, I think we can discuss about everything. We can discuss about the power of ECB, European Central Bank, because the strategy of European Central Bank to reduce inflation, in my opinion, is not the best. I miss Mario Draghi more than, with all the respect for Christine Lagarde. We can discuss about single government, but I think in Europe, speaking about Europe, the real question is not simply inflation. It's not fake question, because it's a real question and it touches the life of the people. But I think today Europe is really in crisis. In crisis for a decline of demography, a crisis for a lot of tension. A crisis because we change Europe. When Ukraine will be part of Europe, at the end of the war, we will have a totally different geography in Europe, because Europe started from Italy, France, Germany, and Benelux, now will be a totally different. So I think we live in a chaotic time. We can choose every type of solution, decree, law to reduce inflation, but the real question is try to understand the world is totally different. And just to finish, thinking about one point, I joked yesterday with the princess, with Richard and other guys, other friends, about a symbol of this chaos in Europe. Thinking about UK. It's not Europe, but is geographically Europe. Thinking about that, there is a prime minister who comes from India, will discuss with the prime minister in Edinburgh, in Scotland, who comes from Pakistan, about the partition between Scotland and England. 75 years, the discussion between India and Pakistan, the real partition. So what means that? There is a chaos around the world. The politicians have to try a solution to describe this chaos, not follow the single problem. Inflation is a part of our problem, but is not, in my opinion, most prominent problem in Europe.
All right, okay. They are both British, though. We will remember that.
Sorry,
born in the UK. So, Luis,
you have a very good guy, good job, because tried the partition 75 years ago. The world is different. It's wonderful.
Luis Alberto Moreno, what idea from you? What's a single idea that you think could make a difference right now?
Look, I think we have to go back to basics. I mean, inflation, sometimes we'll have inflation, sometimes we will not. I come from a part of the world that we've had macro inflation in ways that no other countries have had, as we were saying earlier. I think it all boils down to how societies can produce more and better, and how can they embrace new technologies. And this goes back to an essential part that we've lost in this worldwide discussion, is the consequences of COVID on the education systems, on people. And we have a generation that we could lose as they get into the labor markets. The world is undergoing a profound population change. As Secretary Mnuchin was saying, what you see in India, but this is equally true in Europe, in many parts of the world. If we don't go back to basics and let the animal spirits of our politics drive the discussion, we are going to continuously have these kinds of problems. And these kinds of problems basically are based on inequality that creates a political cleavage that allows, as we have seen in Latin America from the days of Perón to Chavez, basically to divide countries as opposed to uniting. If we cannot continue to get basic consensus around things, our issues will only compound.
Okay, thank you. You know, I want to bring the audience in here. Everybody put your phones down. This is going to be a question for you guys. How many of you believe that prices will continue to rise this year? Okay, so isn't that an issue, though? Are we in danger, do you think, Jeff, of having inflation becoming a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy?
So when I think about housing in the United States in particular, affordable housing is probably the biggest issue facing our cities today. And one of the things that we see happening over and over is government's attempt to try to restrict, as you called it, the rise of costs, the inflation in housing. But I believe that the right answer is not restrictions like rent control. The right answer is to encourage supply, right? And so I believe it's government responsibilities to provide incentives, provide a clear path, clear regulation, so that more supply can be added.
Is there a good example of that? Who's doing that well?
Well, actually, interestingly, this week in Florida, the governor passed a new affordable housing bill that will do just that. He eliminated rent control as a possibility anywhere and increased all the incentives for new production of affordable housing in the state. And I think clearing regulatory hurdles and clearing zoning restrictions for affordable housing is the most important thing that government can do. There's no possible way that you can have enough affordable housing produced by just the government. You need the private sector to add supply to bring prices down.
Interesting. You know, we heard there about social unrest. It's increasing. We've seen what the pension riots in France, increases in social unrest in Latin America. People are angry, right? So I wonder if you could talk about the implications of the cost of living crisis for social cohesion within Europe.
This is a symbol, one more evident signal of the problems today. If the people stay on the street in France, I think it's not simply because the pension age became from 62 to 64, because in the rest of Europe is 65, also in Italy is 67. So if in Italy we arrive to 67, my French friends could arrive to 64. It's not a problem. The real question there is, this is my view, an existential crisis. Who try to use the single political protesters to give voice to this lack of satisfaction. Because the question is not the single point. I believe it is not the single point in every manifestation today. The real question is what type of Europe we have for the future. Because Europe was the great compass in the past. Now Europe lost our credibility and our reputation. I think we need to come back to an idea of Europe able to give hope to the people, give hope to the souls. Today, that is not true. We transform Europe in a very red tape of bureaucracy. We transform Europe in a place of technical, very good thing, but without a vision, without a dream. So I think the question is not simply a single point. Then it's interesting to discuss about the crisis of democracy, because if Macron was elected to change pensions, we cannot stop this reform because the people go in the street, because that transforms the vote we stop with the vote and we start with the like, if we decide that, if we decide the people could stop everything. But the real question is, what type of Europe could change the narrative for the old continent? And I think this is the great question for the generation of leaders in Europe. The only problem today, we continue to speak as Europeans about the father founders, the people who created Europe, but we haven't son dreamers. I think we stop with the narrative about father who created Europe. We have to create a new narrative about the dreams of the new generation. If we don't find that, Europe will be every year in a situation of decline, because demography showed that, and also the reduction of economy showed that. So, with all the respect for the protest in a single country, the real question is a very great question. What type of dream could create a new energy and a push in Europe? And that is not easy to give an answer, because a lot of politicians are influencers in the mind. They think day by day. They don't have a vision.
All right. What dreams can we create, right? Who in the audience has a dream or a question for my panel? Otherwise, Dina, it's coming to you. Right. I want after this next question, Dina needs to have the microphone. Oh, there's one there, Dina. The day has been saved. Let's get the microphone to her. While we do that, I want to come back to your Royal Highness. You mentioned young people and financial literacy. I want to hear a little bit more about the help we can give to them. I've seen a lot of incredible stories in the kingdom of young people who are really seizing the day. Give us a little more on the help we could give.
So to pick up on what my colleague was just saying about a unifying vision, in the kingdom, we have that. The reason you are seeing a success of young people, not just entering the government, but entering the private sector, is today, every single young person knows their role in this vision of evolving our country. What Vision 2030 is creating opportunity for the individual to be a part of the collective and recognize that every piece, every step of work or ambition that they have adds to the collective well-being of everybody else. And I think that's what is really driving us as a nation. Now, you have young people. 70% of our population is younger than 35. Male and female, almost equally divided. You cannot create an opportunity for one gender and not the other, and that's something that we've been able to accomplish through Vision 2030. But looking at these young people, we've also created educational pathways. Over $100 million has been spent on not just traditional education, but expanding the pipelines of opportunity for young people in hospitality and tourism and sports. And people talk to me about this and say, but Reema, this is culture washing, sports washing, and I look at them and say, you're out of your minds. These are over 3 million jobs and opportunities for young people to earn a decent living, a wage that can then help them uplift not just themselves, but their households and their families, and create opportunities for others. We have a moment where we are able to inspire young people to not just take, but to give. And giving is not charity, giving is not exclusively philanthropy, giving is an opportunity and the opportunity to dream. If you came to the kingdom 5 years ago, not one young person would want to step out of the government environment of jobs and cross over into entrepreneurship. Today, 58% of our young people aspire to entrepreneurship, not government work, which means they're willing to take the step out from traditional secure income to opportunity, and that means that there's a system that's supporting and driving them. And I think that that, for me, is what's inspiring about being in the kingdom today.
Thank you very much. Right, if you could stand up, please.
Bravo.
You're here.
Yes, I would first of all like to thank the wonderful panel. Princess Reema, you are absolutely an incredible icon at this point in history. And Prime Minister, thank you very much for your comments. I think what we're talking about is a universal change of consciousness. We have to actually take ourselves and everybody next to us and realize that each of us is a universe. And we have to really take everyone's thoughts and realize that we have to construct the DNA of peace.
Do you have a question? Because it's a great comment. Get to the question,
the question is, how do you take how do you condense what you're saying today to give this great, great aspiration to humanity?
Thank you very much. Right. Anything to add, Luis?
Well, I think you know, we talk about all these macro issues, but people wake up every day and try to make a living and do it the best they can. And I think is a little bit what Reema was saying, is giving people the tools precisely to grow to those dreams. The minute societies lose dreams, bad things happen. And I think that is not only a human responsibility, but it's how you create trust, how you create better citizenship, such that people can thrive from that. And you see it in countries where there is an optimism outlook on things vis-a-vis those who have a pessimistic outlook on things. And that is one of the great ways precisely for people to embrace dreams and grow. And I agree with Reema that today we have a generation that is far more entrepreneurial than anyone before.
Thank you. We're running out of time, but we have to discuss this question around energy and affordable energy. You mentioned the UK. I live in the UK. The cost of energy is crazy. Can energy suppliers do more to hold down energy costs? And how do we balance this need for affordable energy with the need to transition to more sustainable sources of power, Jeff?
So in a similar way to, it's very closely linked to affordable housing, we see this huge transition occurring throughout the US from coal and natural gas to solar and wind and storage. And in order to do that, once again, the government needs to engage the private sector. And so we at Related have formed a new company called energyRe, which is actually doing that and bringing large-scale, utility-scale solar and wind into cities. And that, again, there's bills in Congress today that hopefully will pass, and that will ease permitting and create permitting reform so that impediments to new construction are eliminated for solar and wind development. And ultimately, when regulation decreases and government incentives increase, you have more production and costs come down, and you have more affordable, renewable energy for everybody.
Great. I wonder if you have anything to add from a European perspective as well.
About energy.
About energy costs. Okay.
The real question about energy cost is we made a mistake because a lot of countries, Germany and Italy for first, depend too much from Russia. And they don't look in this part of the world, in this part of the Middle East, and they don't see what happened in Africa. And that, I believe, was a double mistake because we depend on Russia, and that was a mistake for evident reasons, but also we lost the great opportunity for Europe to become a bridge, because with Africa, we cannot continue to leave Africa in the hands of China. So I believe the real great problem for energy is, of course, in the families, in the day by day, but it's also a geopolitical problem, because we lost an unbelievable opportunity was the relation with the new continent. For the future, I think Europe have to left ideology, because we cannot continue with a vision. This is good because it's politically correct. Yes, but if the poor people pay for that, that is not good. That is good to have a lot of applause and a lot of likes on Instagram, but that is not good for your life. So I think we have to change mind also in the day-by-day vision, but in my view, the great question is geopolitics. I'm sorry for the gag about UK, because I can come back about your government was an Italian government, 44 days, leave trust. So I think you became Italian inside. We export made in Italy, also instability.
I'll take the passport if you're going to give it to me.
We have the same passport in the heart.
Right. We've run out of time, unfortunately, but I want you to help me give our panel a massive round of applause. Thank you very much.